Good morning, members. Time is up, and we've also found a quorum, so I declare the meeting open. Item 1 on the agenda, information papers issued since the last meeting. We last had our meeting on the 26th of June, and we have set out the details of the papers issued since the last meeting. Any questions? No? Then item 2. Legislative amendments relating to the carriage of dangerous goods by air. First of all, let's invite the public officers to join us. The administration is going to make use of a PowerPoint to present the proposals to us. Those pieces of local subsidiary legislation will be amended so as to implement the latest safety requirements concerning the transport of dangerous goods by air. There's a requirement from the ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. I'm not going to read out the names of the public officers present. It has been tabled. Mr. Wallace Lau, please walk us through the paper. Good morning. In order to give effect to the latest standards promulgated by the ICAO for the safe transport of dangerous goods by air in Hong Kong, we would like to introduce two pieces of local legislation. They have to be amended. I understand that the technical instructions has been updated, and so we need to align our requirements with the latest edition. Two pieces of subsidiary legislation are involved. First of all, Air Navigation Dangerous Goods Regulations as Schedule 16 to the Air Navigation Hong Kong Order 1995 and Dangerous Goods Consignment by Air Safety Regulations. First of all, aircraft operators are required by law to conduct a dangerous goods acceptance check by using a checklist. This is important in case there is an accident or incident. It will be important to have such information to carry out the investigation. Another point is that more and more passengers are using electronic means to buy the air ticket or carry out the checking in. So aircraft operators have this duty, irrespective of the mode of purchase of air tickets or checking in. The operators have to make sure that passengers are forbidden to transport aboard an aircraft the dangerous goods that are forbidden. This is in relation to the safety duty of the aircraft operators. In relation to the above-mentioned issues, we have already consulted the views of the relevant committee on the third runway system. We have their support. We hope that we can introduce the legislative amendments in the first quarter of 2018. The CD officers will use a PowerPoint presentation to give you a brief idea about the proposed amendments to the subsidiary legislation. Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Mr. Lau. Mr. Chairman, members, the CD has prepared a brief slideshow so as to tell you about the details about the proposed amendments. So first of all, we'll talk about the International Civil Aviation Organization's requirements concerning dangerous goods, and then we have some background information on the transport of dangerous goods by air, the purpose of the proposed amendments, the highlights, public consultation, as well as the arrangements. First of all, according to the technical instructions for the safe transport of dangerous goods by air as issued by ICAO, there are 9 classes of dangerous goods: explosives, compressed gases, flammable liquids, and flammable solids. substances liable to spontaneous combustion, substances which in contact with water emit flammable gases, oxidizing substances, toxic infectious substances, radioactive and corrosive substances. To ensure air safety, the ICAO has come up with the publication of Annex 18 to the Convention on International Civil Aviation. And every 2 years, the technical instructions will be updated in relation to dangerous goods. And the latest edition was issued in December 2016, that is the 2017-2018 edition. The rights and obligations under the convention are also applicable to Hong Kong. This is also the case concerning the technical instructions, and they have been given legal effect through 2 pieces of local subsidiary legislation, namely Air Navigation Dangerous Goods Regulations as Schedule 16 to the Air Navigation Hong Kong Order 1995, which regulates the operational arrangements on the part of aircraft and airport operators concerning transport of dangerous goods by air. Another piece of legislation involved is dangerous goods consignment by air safety regulations, Cap 384 subsidiary legislation A. It says that the shippers and the freight forwarders must have proper handling of the dangerous goods before offering them for air transport. The purpose of the legislative amendment is to make sure that we are in step with the latest requirements of the ICAO so as to enhance our air safety. I want to talk about the highlights of the proposed amendments. First of all, acceptance check of the DG to be carried by air is cargo. At present, aircraft operators are required by law to conduct a DG acceptance check by using a checklist before a consignment containing dangerous goods is accepted for air carriage. The latest edition of the TI has enhanced the relevant requirement. It says that aircraft operators, in other words, airline companies, must identify the person performing the check. This is to make sure that this important piece of information will be available in the event of an accident or incident to facilitate the conduct of an investigation. Another main point is about DG information conveyed to passengers. Technological advancement has changed and diversified the procedures of checking in and boarding pass issuance. Therefore, the latest edition of the TIs reinforces the current practice to ensure that aircraft operators will inform the passengers of the DG that passengers are forbidden to transport aboard an aircraft, no matter how the passengers purchase their tickets and or check in their flights, or before they get issued with their boarding passes, the passengers are made aware of the list, and also before they actually board the aircraft, they are made aware of the forbidden classes. In case that no aircraft boarding passes are issued, then the operators must make sure that the information is relayed to the passengers before they actually board the aircraft. Moreover, the information should be present at each of the places in an airport where tickets and boarding passes are issued, passenger baggage is dropped off, and aircraft boarding areas are maintained, and at any other location where passengers are issued boarding passes and or checked baggage is accepted. The purpose is to make sure that irrespective of the mode or approach adopted by passengers for checking in and having their boarding passes issued, the aircraft operators can effectively inform the passengers in relation to the dangerous goods forbidden. As to our public consultation exercise, after the ICAO has issued the latest edition of the TI in January this year, we have already uploaded the information onto our website. At the same time, we've written to our stakeholders, informing them of the details of the proposed amendments. We have held seminars and workshops to explain the details. We have also set up a hotline for inquiries. In other words, the stakeholders in the industry and members of the public are welcome to call us. Moreover, the information has been included in the Dangerous Goods Regulations (DGR) issued by the International Air Transport Association (IATA), and it is for the worldwide compliance. In fact, the industry has already been following the latest dangerous goods regulations, and the industry has no query or objection to the proposed amendments. As to the arrangements, as I said, it is our plan to come to the LegCo in the fourth quarter of the year, and then our purpose or our objective is to bring it into effect in the first quarter of 2018 after completing the legislative procedures. And lastly, we appeal to members to support our proposed amendments so that we can effectively implement the latest version of the technical instructions for the sake of safe transport of dangerous goods by air. Chen Chen-ying, Dr. Lu Wai-guok, Mr. Jeremy Tam have raised their hands to ask questions. Who else would like to ask questions? 4 minutes each. Mr. Chen. Well, he's just left the conference room. So, Dr. Lu Wai-guok. Thank you, Chair. As to the proposed amendments, in future, we are going to get the specific documents to implement the change, and we have an opportunity to look at the details. In the case of the passengers, I think it's getting more complicated. In the past, for air passengers, we'll certainly pay attention to the list of forbidden articles, and then they will be checked in. But some other articles are not even allowed as part of the checked-in baggage. Currently, on the other hand, some articles like the charger, for our mobile phones, etc., can only be included in our hand-carried baggage instead of having them checked in. So with changes in the consumer products, I understand that the relevant lists have been amended. Sometimes air passengers may not have a clear idea. So I just want to know how the technical instructions are going to take care of this. I understand that the forbidden list will be amended from time to time. Sometimes an article cannot be checked in and you have to carry it with you. So how are we going to cope with the frequent changes? Mr. Lau. Thank you, Dr. Low. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Low is right. That is, the air industry is making changes from time to time in the light of the changes in the risks as well as the emergence of new products. I think in the past there were passengers without knowing it properly breached the law in bringing with them certain items. That's why once every 2 years, the technical instructions will be updated by ICAO. For Hong Kong to be an air aviation hub and for us to be an active member of the ICAO, and we have been supporting ICAO all the time. In fact, we are a member as a result of China's membership. We have to make sure that our domestic legislation will reflect the latest international standards as to how we can take care of the needs of the passengers so that they won't be breaching the law unknowingly. If you may permit me, I would like to defer to Ms. Wong. Yes, Ms. Wong, please. Thank you. I think the member's question is a good one. Exactly because of this, the ICAO has amended the TIs.
As I mentioned in the presentation, one objective is to ensure that no matter the circumstances, the aircraft operator will be able to inform passengers of the dangerous goods or the categories of dangerous goods that the passengers are forbidden to transport aboard an aircraft, and the information should be disseminated effectively. So under all circumstances, the aircraft operator is responsible for disseminating the information to passengers. This can be done by way of information provided at the counter and at the purchase of tickets and the boarding passes. The department has also published pamphlets, and also in the airport terminal building, we also have a information kiosk in relation to the dangerous goods, so as to communicate to passengers what types of dangerous goods can be transported or not aboard an aircraft. And the staff of aircraft operators are also required to undergo training so as to handle inquiries from passengers on dangerous goods. As for the other point mentioned, the types of products that can be carried on board, including lithium battery operated mobile devices and other electronic personal devices. We do publish a pamphlet, and the information is also available online. For notebook computers, for example, it can be carried on board or in the drop-off baggage, whereas for other kinds of electronic mobile device, it can only be carried on board, and because of the complexity of information, we make it available on the website and in a pamphlet. And we do have a hotline. Well, about the information you mentioned, can you give us a written response? Yes, we'll do so after the meeting. Next, Mr. Jeremy Tam. I support this amendment, but I'd like to share this with members. Very often for passengers, apart from reading the information on the website of aircraft operators, the passengers can also check the information on the website of the Hong Kong International Airport. But I've spent quite some time in digging out this information on their website, so please relay this message to the HKIA. I clicked site map, and then I clicked the security of the airport before I find this list of dangerous goods. I think this is an important piece of information. It should be displayed at the portal site. And just now, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok was speaking for 4 minutes, and I spent the whole of 4 minutes just looking for this list. It's quite obscure, so please tell them. I can give you another example. I received this complaint in my ward office. There's a piece of baggage loaded in Hong Kong and with a lithium battery placed inside, and there was nothing wrong. And when the passenger then transit for another flight in India, the battery was found, and it was found to be contravening the requirement, and in the end, the passenger had to sign an undertaking to retrieve the battery. The complaint finally reached my office because ultimately the whole baggage was gone. The aircraft operator was unable to retrieve the baggage. I want to know whether the Chicago Convention applies to all state members, because the common phenomenon nowadays is batteries, whether or not it is a power bank or an external charger, or whether it is battery as a part of a mobile phone or other devices. There are different approaches to these two types. I want to know whether there is a common standard, and I want to know whether this applies to all members of ICAO. To take your first question, I will relay your message to the Hong Kong IA on how they can improve the design of the website, and I agree that the list of DG to be transported aboard should be made available at the portal site, and then I can defer to Mr. Ng to take your second question. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Member, for your question. The ICAO's requirement applies to all 191 contracting states. At the same time, we understand that according to the IATA, the carriers who are members of IATA may impose additional requirements because of their risk assessment levels. Usually, we would advise passengers that before they depart, they should check whether there are additional requirements imposed by the aircraft operators, so that when in relation to their smartphones and other mobile gadgets. So this responds to the question I raised. The gadget itself might be all right at the time when the passenger boarded the aircraft, but then it would be a contravention when it reaches another country. Whether or not it's a Civil Aviation Department or the Hong Kong IA's website, I think this should be made known to the public. Otherwise, I would be ignorant about the requirements elsewhere. Well, exactly, we have been receiving inquiries from passengers on the same point. Apart from checking the information on the aircraft operator's website, on our website, they should also check the additional requirements on the website of the aircraft operators concerned, and we'll make extra effort in this regard. Mr. Martin Liao, your paper doesn't distinguish between the hand carry baggage and drop-off baggage. But my experience is that sometimes the device can be placed in a drop-off baggage, but not on a hand carry baggage. If there is no distinction in the information provided, it will be confusing to passengers. For example, you talked about informing passengers of the DG at the time when the passenger boards the craft, but by that time the baggage might have been dropped off already, so it will be too late. I want to know whether there will be different arrangements to avoid confusion. About forbidding the types of DGs to be transported aboard an aircraft. Apart from the aircraft operators, I think that the airport authority should also be responsible. Because for an aircraft operator to sell tickets or to issue boarding passes, and not until then should they be required to inform passengers, it will be very confusing, because you won't have any idea whether the passengers at the boarding gate will have been informed or not. The more effective way is for the airport authority to handle this matter. Sometimes at the airport, because we need to go through security check for hand carry baggage, and it comes with a display board with graphic depiction of the types of DGs allowed on board. But this can only be done by the airport authority, not by aircraft operators. At the stage when the bags are checked by the customs, since every passenger will be passing the gate, I think that if the information is provided at that location, it will be more effective. Thank you for your question. I will just briefly respond to your suggestion, and then I will defer to Mr. Ng. The objective of the proposed amendments is that the aircraft operators should perform due diligence in informing passengers of the types of DGs to be allowed on board. About informing passengers at the boarding gate or at the ticket counter, the measure is put in place because nowadays because of the different forms of issuance of boarding pass, say for example through the telephone, the last gatekeeping stage would be at that point at the boarding gate. Sorry to interject, but how would the staff at the boarding gate know whether the passenger holds an electronic boarding pass or not, or a paper boarding pass, and decide whether the passenger has been informed or not? I think there is an operational difficulty here. I can defer to Mr. Ng to take your question. I'm talking about the objective. We have multiple gateways. For somebody having a traditional boarding pass, the passenger would have been informed many times, in fact. Mr. Ng. Well, nowadays there are different approaches to the issuance of boarding passes. One way is to have e-boarding pass, whether the e-boarding pass is issued from a computer or from a mobile device. Usually, at the confirmation stage, there will be a pop-up page informing passengers of the DGs, and that's one category. The other category of passengers is the traditional channel, that means processing a boarding pass at the airport counter, and the staff member will at that point inform passengers not to carry certain DGs on board the aircraft. But the point is, at the boarding gate, the staff member may not know whether the passenger is carrying any DG, but the security check will be performed there and then at the gate, and then the X-ray machine can identify whether there is any forbidden articles, and in the event of any forbidden articles being found, the staff member will immediately direct the passengers to put the DG back in the drop-off baggage, whereas in the past this will be done after going through the immigration counter, such that it would be difficult to ask the passenger to leave the restricted area. After 2008 or 09, the arrangement has been changed. Security check would be performed first before a passenger goes through immigration counter, so as to avoid confusion. If the passenger has to return to the other side. Mr. Ronald Chen, I'm sorry, 3 meetings are going on in this complex at the same time. I don't know whether my question has been asked by other members. About the proposed legislative amendments, the aircraft operators are required to conduct the check, but in relation to freight cargo, I think that the role is clearer. But when it comes to passengers, there are different parties, including the customs and excise, immigration, and the airport staff. But now the aircraft operator are required by law to conduct the check. I want to know who is the identifying person, and also about conducting checks. I want to know whether the staff members will be required to undergo training and then to equip themselves with professional knowledge before conducting these 2 checks. I think your question was answered partially on the circumstances under which passengers would be informed and where warnings would be displayed. But Wallace, could you please very succinctly respond to his question? And about the level of training required for staff members, please also respond to that. To answer Mr. Chan's first question about the person conducting the acceptance check, it only applies to cargo carried by air. About your second question, I will defer to Mr. Ng to take your question. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your question. For ground staff conducting the acceptance check of DG, They are required to undergo training, and the training would cover the types of DG and the procedural matters. And the validity period would be 1 of 2 years, and then that means once every 2 years they would need to undergo a review training. Paragraph 12 stipulates that at the moment the requirements are implemented administratively. Does it mean that every time the ICAO revises technical instructions or other requirements, how would the CAD review the current situation and decide whether to impose the latest requirement administratively or to introduce legislative amendments? Wallace, I'll defer to Mr. Ng. The timeline is usually that the TIs will be updated and published by ICAO biannually. It will usually be published at the end of a year. In relation to the 2017-18 edition, it was published at the end of 2016. So in the fourth quarter of 2016, we learned about the first draft of that edition. And at that stage, we would start arranging briefing sessions for the sector. So in December 2016, we informed the sector of the latest edition, and then we'll review the latest edition, and then we uploaded the latest edition online at the beginning of 2017. And then we, at the same time, initiated the legislative procedure. At the same time, we have reported to members at the panel, and airborne safety at the same time is not affected, because when the 2017-18 edition comes into force, the ICAO also has a booklet in relation to transport of DG by air, which comes into effect on the 1st of January 2017, and the IATA would also the IATA guidelines will also apply locally, and the IATA attaches great importance to aircraft safety, and it will ensure that the state members would follow the requirements of the ICAO, and therefore safety is not compromised. Mr. Yu Siwing, in relation to paragraph 8.1, points 1 and 2, the relevant requirement is that passengers should be informed at the point of ticket purchase that the TG which are forbidden to be transported aboard. So this point of ticket purchase may be in a travel agency, or on the internet, or from an aircraft operator. Now, let's say for purchasing tickets on the internet, do you require the information to be displayed in on a website? Because for aircraft operator, usually they follow the requirements more closely. Whereas for travel agencies, we have 1,000 travel agencies in Hong Kong with different practices of selling tickets. Let's say if the passenger hasn't been informed, according to your paper, it is still all right, because before the boarding pass is issued, the information can still be conveyed to passengers. But as you know, sometimes or some websites, no physical boarding pass would be issued. And also, during security check, a passenger may claim that he hasn't been informed by either the travel agency or other parties. The ticket might have been purchased on the internet. So it would be better if the information is displayed on the website, or the passenger would claim that he has not been informed, and the complaint would be lodged against the aircraft or the travel agency. And the passenger may complain about the loss of time or missing flight. And in such circumstances, how would you interpret the passenger's complaint?
Mr. Ng, please. Well, some people may buy tickets online, and as the member pointed out, some of them are purchased through the travel agents. So for ICAO, in its amendments, also mentioned that whenever tickets are bought online and when the passengers confirm the tickets and they would like to get the boarding pass online as well, the online sales providers have to provide such information. Normally, there will be a pop-up box online, and the passengers are required to put a tick to the box to confirm that he understands about the requirements on the dangerous goods. So that's how online processes are like. Now, as for travel agents selling air tickets, normally we see that for e-tickets, when the e-tickets are issued, on the tickets themselves, there will be another website leading to information on the dangerous goods. Now, even when a passenger doesn't read through the information, he will read about such information at the counter of the airport. And even if he is getting his boarding pass in a machine, then he will be also seeing the information. And there is this self-service kiosk serving the passengers, and the same goes for these kiosks. If the passengers process his own boarding pass through such kiosks, now such display of information will also be shown on the kiosk before the issuing of the boarding pass, so that the passengers will have to tick to show that he understands the information. Mr. Yu Si-wing. Well, can I follow up? Yes, please, be quick. I would like to ascertain the responsibility clearly. You said that the passengers will be shown the information at some locations, and the passengers may say that I don't know that, well, there are indeed so many conditions. Well, normally such information is in small print, and passengers will like the sellers to take the responsibility rather than himself. So if that happens, do you think the travel agents will also share the responsibility if the passengers are not properly informed? Mr. Ng. For the travel agents, the legislative requirement is that the responsibility is on the passengers, and the passengers should not be bringing dangerous goods on board. So, as long as the airline operators and the travel agents have done what they should do, and ultimately the passengers have brought the dangerous goods on board, it would be the responsibility of, the responsibility lies squarely on the passengers. Well, Ms. Wong said that there have been many locations showing all the terms and the responsibility of the different parties, etc. I think it would be better if you can do more publicity to let passengers know exactly what they are required to do. And passengers would also be, always be criticizing the airline operators, the airport staff, etc. So how should we be able to let passengers know exactly it is their responsibility? So that should be something more to be done. Now, lastly, you have informed the sector about the legislative amendment, and now you are doing it by way of administrative means, and that has been in place for over half a year. So, DS, have you received any complaints or inquiries from the sector when they handle the situation? Is there any room for improvements? Some members have also asked about how the legislation is going to work, and I agree that Hong Kong laws, may be different from those in other countries. Say, for example, for a mobile phone, maybe you are dealing different different countries are dealing with different brands of mobile phones differently. So in terms of cargo, Mr. Jeremy Tam also mentioned that when passengers are on transit, then there may be a problem and so on. And it is maybe illegal to export a certain brand from Hong Kong, but then re-export or import in other countries is banned. Say, for example, toy gun. Well, in Hong Kong, there's no problem of exporting toy guns. But then if the toy guns reach a certain country, a country may ban the import of such toy guns. So, well, the laws are changing too rapidly. You say that the amendment now is made once every 2 years. So what more can you do to help passengers so that they will not be ending up in a situation where their goods can be exported from Hong Kong but not imported by another country? Thank you. Chairman, I really appreciate your concern and understand your comment. As I explained before, for such aircraft aviation security issues, these are very much international issues, and that's why we need ICAO to update the requirement once every 2 years, and that's because of the need to have counter-terrorism measures and to uphold security worldwide. So what CAD can do is that whenever there is amendment to such a requirement, we must step up our publicity. And as I explained all along, we have consulted the sector on these. And in the future, if there are requirements involving the members of the public and passengers, we will certainly strengthen publicity so that they are fully informed of the changes. And if we need legislative amendment, we will have to come to the LegCo, and we would also do more publicity so that we can cover the passengers in our consultation process as well, so that passengers will not be uninformed and they will end up in all kinds of the troubles mentioned by the chairman yourself. Now, as for the past half year, is there any problem encountered by the sector or passengers at the airport? So can I defer to Mr. Ng? In this period, we haven't received many complaints from passengers. Rather, I would like to add strengthening publicity. When passengers go to an overseas country, they may encounter the problems you mentioned. The CAD have worked with the Airports Council International, and we have liaised with them. And we can, through this Council International, talk to different airports and so that we can step up the communication on dangerous goods so that passengers in Hong Kong know exactly what they should not be bringing on board. We can discuss with the Airport Councils International. What I would like to ask is that, well, I don't have a pecuniary interest here. I'm a member of the AAHK, and also I am chairman of the Hong Kong Airport Security Company. I must declare that. But then you may be broadcasting certain warnings at the airport. It may be difficult for you to, say, work on dangerous goods. So can you do more on things which we consider important? Let's not try to create inconvenience to passengers. Let's not having the scenario where passengers will be caught, say, in overseas countries. Passengers can bring the goods out of Hong Kong legally, but then they may be caught in overseas countries. So for the freight forwarders, the travel agents, they must do something about this. while it's difficult, of course, for you to check every item of the passengers, but let's do more so that we will not regret in the future. So thank you very much for coming to this meeting today. Before we wrap up the discussion here, can I ask members, do we support this legislative proposal? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Next item is the reprovisioning of Hong Kong Post's headquarters in the General Post Office building to a government institutional or community site at Wang Ching Street, Kowloon Bay. So can I now invite the administration team to join us, please? I would like to thank Mr. Edward Yao, the Secretary for CED, and then we also have Mr. Gordon Leung, the Postmaster General. And for the other officials, I'm not going to introduce them one by one. The list has been tabled. So can I now first ask Mr. Edward Lau, the Secretary, to walk us through the paper today. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. I am the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, and this is the first time that I'm attending the EDP meeting. And this is a close partner of ours in the future, so I'm very pleased that before the summer recess, I can meet with you. Now, for this paper, this is a straightforward paper. I believe that you may have different views on this. Well, in a nutshell, now, at the Central Harbour Front, the GPO building, we are plan to relocate it to a site in Kowloon Bay. There are two objectives. First is to reprovision this building at a new place and making use of this opportunity to try to consolidate the various functions and services of the post office, and as the headquarters can play an even better role. And also we would like to respond to aspirations of the public and also the requirement of the Audit Commission, so that the Site 3 site at the Central Harbour Front can be released, and that there can be new planning for the harbour front to meet with commercial development needs. Now, the Planning Department has done certain work on that, and I think that that does public good, because we are short of Grade A office space now, and also there has been a lot of discussion on the new Central Harbour Front in the past, and we have come up with a planning outline. And apart from building commercial buildings, there can also be open space and other community facilities to be provided there. So through today's discussion, we hope that to get your views, and then we will also be submitting the proposal to the FC, and the cost will be $1.7 billion. And after the project is completed, we hope that to be able to achieve the two objectives I mentioned. And the new Postmaster General, Mr. Gordon Leung, is also with us today, so we welcome views from members. So I think I'll pause here. Thank you, Secretary. Is now the question time. Ms. Tanya Chan, Mr. Holden Chow, Mr. Ronick Chan, Mr. Ted Hui, Mr. Jeremy Tam, Mr. Kenneth Leung, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok have said that they would like to speak. Any other members? Well, because after this item, we have another item, which is a public hearing. And we've invited members of the public to come. And also Mr. Elvin Young as well would like to raise a question. Okay, 3 minutes, please. Please be succinct in your question. And also, the Secretary, please be succinct to your answer as well. Ms. Tanya Chen, thank you. Chairman, I am not a member of the EPT, and I'd like to thank the Chairman for allowing me to speak. I would like to express a Civic Party stance here. I hope that the government can reconsider and not to demolish the GPO building in Central. We understand, of course, that Well, this is not just the civic party's request, but also the request from some other civic bodies. We met with Mrs. Carrie Lam the other day, and we also raised the same request. We know that this is not a historic building because it's not 50 years old yet, but then from its architecture, its structure, and its location, and its history in Hong Kong, and also its use, and etc. So it will be such a pity that we demolish it. Now, given Hong Kong's present building capacity, I think we can maintain GPO building and then build on it some Grade A office building. We might have to be taking a more relaxed approach in doing that. But let's not waste this, put this building to waste. This is a building which is very valuable. Mr. Lee, a member of the public, has written to us, and he has sent in his letter to the planning department as well. I know that you have an urgent need for building Grade A office building, but I don't think this is the only place at Site 3 which can provide Grade A office buildings. I hope that the government can reconsider their plan. I know that many consultations have been done, but then the consultation has all along has very much been focused on the Queen's Pier. And some members of the public may not notice that we will have to demolish the entire GPO building. I'm not trying to overturn your decision, but I'm asking that you make some modifications on your original design, just like what Mr. Lee raised. At least the government should be considering our request. Can you consider some relaxation so that you can have both a GPO building and also Grade A office space at the same time? And at the same time, we can serve the public more effectively. Secretary. Well, Ms. Chan, thank you for your comments. So I take that you agree that the headquarters should be relocated. The government as a whole, and also especially in Development Bureau, when they consider the planning for the central district, we planned to demolish the GPO building because in the plan there will be new buildings to be erected, and also there will be ancillary facilities to be provided. But there may be divergent views in the community. But the government at this juncture doesn't have the plan that you proposed. Maybe members may have different views as well. So let's hear more views first. Mr. Holden CHOW. Thank you, Chairman. When we look at history, in 1985, the government has already have a plan to relocate the GPO outside of Central, and in 2010, a site in Kowloon Bay has been provided or earmarked for reprovisioning the GPO building, and the Audit Commission has also made a recommendation saying that space in the central area can be released for better uses. So on that basis, I think we should try every means to do that. Well, let's not give people the impression that the post office is taking advantage of using this piece of precious land site in the central. Now, if the GPO, the headquarters is going to be reprovisioned in Kowloon Bay, what is your traffic impact assessment? Now, we need to provide fast post service, so I think the traffic impact assessment is important. So I would like to hear more on that. Also, in the paper, I noticed that for the Kowloon Bay building, there will be different facilities, including parking facilities. So I would like to know that when the business district in Kowloon Bay is going to be established, what is your assessment of the need for car parking spaces in the entire area? And also, Ms. Tanya Chan proposed her suggestion or idea, and I would like to ask if the GPO building is provisioned in Kowloon Bay, but then the GPO building is still maintained or retained in the central area and is still preserved. and you are on that site building grade A office, and if that is done, is that feasible? Because at the same time you can respond to Audit Commission's request, and at the same time preserve the old building. So can I ask the post office to take the question on the use for the new building in Kowloon Bay?
As for parking, we've asked the ASD to carry out an assessment. Well, as far as the Hong Kong Post is concerned, our impact on traffic will be minimal, so we are not going to aggravate the traffic congestion. As to the design of the new building, we will only be providing for 30 plus parking spaces for the vehicles of the Hong Kong Post, and they have to be parked there overnight. As to whether it will worsen the parking problems in the district, I don't think so. As to whether there's sufficient parking spaces in the area for our clients, we understand that the ASD has carried out a survey and it has been found that there are sufficient parking spaces in the vicinity. I don't think parking is an item that we should address today, but we do understand that there is inadequate parking spaces in many districts in Hong Kong. So whether the headquarters is reprovisioned in Kowloon Bay or in another district, it takes another bureau to address the problem. And then for the redevelopment of the GPO site, again, parking would have to be looked into. Mr. Chen Chen-yung, in relation to reprovisioning of the Hong Kong Post headquarters in the Central, I support it. And then for Grade A office in the Central, we have a shortage. We need to find a solution to fill the gap in the short term. As to the reprovisioning of the Hong Kong Post headquarters, I have some questions about postal service. I want to know whether you sell first-day covers, speed delivery, or the posting or printing materials would account for the core of your business. The central location of the Hong Kong PE is very important. So for your main business, will it be affected as a result of the relocation? And then the Hong Kong Post is being run as a trading fund. In the early days, after being reprovisioned, do you think that you are likely to suffer from a deficit and so having a bearing on your cash flow? Will the government provide for a special financial arrangement? And then for the environmentally friendly linking system in Kowloon Bay, the chosen location isn't really that accessible. Are you going to include a station near the relocated area so that it will also be served by the EFLS as well? Could I answer? I will give an answer and then I will invite Mr. Yen to supplement. Well, for the Hong Kong Post, as far as our operation is concerned, local mail doesn't really making much money for us. Usually, we generate more revenue in terms of overseas mail. As to whether our business will be affected as a result of the reprovisioning, I don't think so, because for overseas mail, it is usually being handled elsewhere and not at this particular headquarters. After reprovisioning, in order to serve the district needs, we'll still be having a post office in the vicinity of the current headquarters, so the local postal needs can still be addressed. Mr. Yan, currently the Kowloon Bay Post Office is located in Sheng Yuk Road, and it will be relocated to the new headquarters building. It will be enlarged in terms of the size. And then for Kowloon Bay, we have got many newly completed office buildings. previous industrial office buildings have been converted into commercial buildings. They do have a demand for a postal service. So I think we are going to have more counters. We have a larger space at the new Kowloon Bay Post Office, and then we can serve the business area. Mr. Ted Hui, I speak in objection to the demolition of the Hong Kong Post headquarters. Of course, the paper doesn't actually talk about the demolition. You merely talk about reprovisioning, but then you are not going to move. You're going to pull it down. The building was built in the 1970s. It has a style of simplicity and functionality. I think there is a value of conservation. It is part of the building cluster comprising the City Hall as well as the Queen's Pier, and it reflects the history of Hong Kong in the 1970s. It has a historic value. I support the idea that we can relocate the headquarters to Kowloon Bay. But then it doesn't mean that you must pull down the building. You can turn it into a government office, or you can have it on lease to commercial tenants. We talked about consultation exercise, but then it took place 10 years ago. As it has been pointed out, the Hong Kong Post headquarters wasn't the focus of the discussion. So I think you need to consult the people again. You consulted the the Kwun Tong District Council. What about the Central and Western District Council? Are you dismissing our strong request to conserve the building? This should be reflected in any future papers in relation to this matter. 6 months ago, I carried out a voice survey. Over 52.56% of the respondents have regarded the Hong Kong Post headquarters as a landmark building. More than half of them said that it has a high conservation value. Finally, I asked if they would agree to the demolition. 57.54% of the respondents would not agree to the demolition. I'm going to give you the information in details, so please make sure that you remember the loud and clear message. And if you want to demolish it, make sure you give us a timetable. How many people did you cover? Between 500 to 1,000, for the reference of the administration. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Hui, for supporting the reprovisioning of the Hong Kong Post headquarters. As to the building itself, as I have said, we are going to follow the recommendations in the UDS. Other than commercial development, there will also be other community facilities. I would like to defer to the Hong Kong Post. I would defer to the planning department. Who will take care of this? Well, other than the need for land for development, since 2007, we have already taken a good look. In relation to Site 3, the proposed development is in line with a number of urban design principles: low density, stepped profile, and the building height will decrease from the hillside to the waterfront. More than half of the land will be for the public enjoyment free of charge. It has also got a high greening ratio. Moreover, we are going to have a proper pedestrian network. There will be a landscaped pedestrian deck spanning across 2 major thoroughfares, so pedestrians can use the landscaped deck to reach the waterfront. An OZP has been endorsed by the Town Planning Board. Certain development parameters and design requirements have been included in the approval. It is built on the 2007 study. There were certain urban design requirements. This is also in line with the harbour planning principles and guidelines. We believe that the proposal is the best, and we can give play to what the Harbourfront Commission and what the public would like to get, and this is also the government's wish. That is, we have a accessible and vital harbourfront. When will it be put down? The next to speak will be Jeremy Tam. Please switch on his mic. Thank you. Why don't you answer the question as to when it will be put down? Sorry, I didn't hear you. When you will demolish it? Mr. Chairman, our plan is that first of all we need to get the FC's funding, and then this will be regarded as a public works project. Well, there will be two parts to the reprovisioning exercise. First of all, the district-related postal services will be reprovisioned in Section 3A to the north of Long Wall Road in the central, so service will not be interrupted. As to the second part, and this is the focus of today's paper, that is the Hong Kong Post headquarters will be reprovisioned in the GPO will be relocated to a GIC site in Kowloon Bay, and after that we'll then pull down the existing GPO building. Chair, my question is, now you're going to reprovision the Hong Kong Post headquarters. What about the postal service needs in the central? How are you going to see to that? And then currently, at Lei Yuen Mun Road car park, some space has been used by the Hong Kong Post so as to support the courier service of the speed post service. That means that the members of the public are denied the chance to have sufficient parking space. So, Mr. Yan from the Hong Kong Post. Now, after the headquarters has been reprovisioned to Kowloon Bay for the delivery counter service, the parcel counters, etc., all of them will not be affected because the service will still be provided in the central, so the business as well as the residential tenants won't be affected. Indeed, we have a parcel center in Lei Yuen Mun, and we have been renting certain parking spaces there. We have talked to the housing department who would like to tie in with the latest development. For the new building, it will only have 30 parking spaces, but then it can meet the needs of the users of the building. What do you mean by tying in with the development? Now, for the new building, it is not going to have adequate parking spaces. So are you going to move out from the Lei Yuen Mun car park? Well, for the parking spaces at Lei Yuen Mun, we have worked through the Government Properties Agency. We have a need for such, and the GPA has given us assistance. So currently, we are using the spaces in Lei Yuen Mun. If we can get an appropriate location in Kwun Tong, we can also move out. Mr. Kenneth Leung, I think this is the one that we should keep, but then it has become the worldwide building. For the existing headquarters, it reflects the architectural style in the 1970s. I think for the central, we need more Grade A office space. 2 points here. For such 3, you are going to put down the Star Ferry car park. So how are you going to provide more parking spaces in the future? Or is it that you want no cars to be driven into the central district? Is that the case? And then during public holidays and weekends, we have got limited service at the Hong Kong Post headquarters. On Site 3, you are also going to provide a postal service for the working population in the central. So are you going to continue the weekend service? And then you have got a plan. I understand that at the waterfront, the building height restriction will be 30 MPD, 40 MPD, etc. So are you sure that you are not going to exceed the building height restriction? For the Secretary, the first and the third questions will be taken up by the Planning Department. Would it be Ms. Au? Yes, thank you. The Planning Department carried out a review in 2016. It was confirmed that at Site 3, 325 public parking spaces will be available for private cars, another 30 for motorcycles. According to the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines, Site 3 will mainly be for commercial development. There will be another 500 parking spaces for the new users. There are two parts. For 3A, there is the one to the north of Long Wall Road. It will be developed first. The developer will need to come up with 250 public parking spaces. Can I interrupt? It comes across my mind that perhaps you dispense with the parking spaces, have more Grade A office space, and then everybody can only walk there instead of drive there, and then it will be more walkable. We have tried to balance the needs of the congestion as well as the parking needs. The OZP has already said that in the western portion, the building height restriction is 50 m, in the west 16 MPD only, so it will be more spacious. There will be more open space. Are you going to relax the building height restriction, or is it impossible? This is a CDA site, so the developer will have to submit a master layout plan to the Town Planning Board. It will be vetted in accordance with the usual procedures, but then the building height restriction has been laid down. Dr. Low. Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is about the relocation or reprovisioning of the Hong Kong Post headquarters to a GIC site at Wang Chin Street, Kowloon Bay. One day, the matter will go to the PWSC. I think it's better for us to focus on the reprovisioning exercise. I think it's better to focus on the reprovisioning instead of focusing on what will happen to the existing site. Otherwise, at the PWC meeting, we'll have to have a debate afresh, and then we will revisit the design, etc. Then it will be hard for the PWC to handle. Now let me come back to the reprovisioning of the Hong Kong Post headquarters in Kowloon Bay. I think we need to think carefully. The service should be user-friendly. Members raised the question about parking. Working staff members have a need for parking, and then you can imagine that for the Hong Kong Post headquarters, there will be huge volumes of items to be mailed. If you don't allow brief parking, and if you don't allow loading and unloading activities by the public, it is impossible. I think all of us have the experience of having to send electro mails items. Even for the Hong Kong Post headquarters, it is most inconvenient. You can just stop very briefly, and then you have to move a large amount of articles into the Hong Kong Post office. It must be reprovisioned, the headquarters. However, you have to learn from the experience. You have to make sure that the operation is user-friendly. This is important. For Site 3, I understand that it has been discussed for a long time. And then for the new Central Harbour Front, I think the planning has to be taken as a whole. For Site 3, yes, it is going to provide more office space, more land for retailing, and then we'll get some open space there. Site 3 will be connected with the new central harbourfront as well as the core business district. It is an important site. I know that there will be a pedestrian deck, there will be landscaped areas, there will be public open space. So I believe that such planning matters should be taken up by another panel. And perhaps we should try to think of including elements that is conducive to collective memory.
Collective memory is a popular topic, but it doesn't mean that we should stop all redevelopment. I think that in relation to the new GPO building and its design, we need more information, please. Secretary, about the second part of your comment, I note your comment. About the first part, it has to do with loading and unloading of goods. I think that a lot of issues raised today are repetitive. Perhaps you can just answer in a consolidated manner. PG. Well, we'll make sure that in terms of the design of the GPO in the future, it will facilitate users and the public. And details of the design will be provided when the proposal is submitted to the PWSC. Mr. Alvin Young. Thank you, Chairman. I think Dr. Low Wai Kwok has correctly pointed out that the administration submits this proposal to the PWSC. The Secretary should expect a lot of members asking questions on policy issues as well as the proposal. I do have a practical issue. At the moment, on weekends, the GPO opens and it is convenient for foreign domestic helpers to use the postal service. I want to know whether a similar arrangement will be provided in the future GPO building, and that it will operate on weekends. Yes, at the moment it provides weekend service, and whether or not it's a general post office or its branches, we adjust our opening hours to meet the needs of the public, and we do have in mind that the reprovisioned GPO will continue to provide service on the weekend. Another point is I want to know whether the reprovisioned headquarters will be as spacious as the current GPO, because it will be situated in a new CBD and there will be a keen demand for bulk mail. For the branches, we understand that it is they're so much smaller. So I want to know for the post office in Central in the future whether it will be scaled back and whether there will be sufficient loading and unloading bays for vehicles. Well, basically, the service counters would occupy 100 square meters, much larger than the Kowloon Bay Post Office at Cheung Yut Road at the moment, and the number of service counters will be increased from 8 to 11. And unlike the KBYPO at Cheung Yut Road, there won't be separate counters for different functions. They are going to have multi-purpose counters to enhance efficiency. As we're going to have a bulk mail AML center as well, we will earmark a large number of parking spaces for customers. So on the whole, the service level should increase. I still have some time left. I understand that this is not under the purview of the CEDB. I just want, since the Public Office of DB is here, Development Bureau is here, I want them to note our strong demand and that the GPO should not be, or the GPO building should not be demolished casually after reprovisioning the headquarters. Mr. Peter Shiu. I support the reprovisioning of the GPO to Kowloon Bay because in the future other government departments will be provisioned there. And also the parking problem for bulk mail, and very often we need to double park outside GPO, and it's not operationally feasible. But anyway, the GPO at the moment is still on the Hong Kong Island side. But let's say if we want to send out mail in mass in the future in Central, is there any alternative? Second question. For the Site 3 of New Central Harbour Front, stakeholders have commented that if a Grade 8 commercial building is to be built there, I think the HSBC and the Jardine House will be affected because the harbour view would be blocked. So these are two major conglomerates, and the value of their properties would be reduced. I want to know your take on this. I'll defer the Postmaster General to respond to the question of postal service, and then I'll answer the rest of the question. As mentioned just now, in the new site, there will be postal service available in the CDA, and will also cater for the needs of the demand for postal service. As mentioned just now, for Site 3, the building height restriction on the west side and the east side are just 50 and 16 respectively, which is in line with the outline zoning plan. Members mentioned the building heights of other buildings nearby. For IFC is 408, for Jardine House is 182 MPD, and the majority view is that the development at Site 3 should be one of very low density. There would not be the situation where the harbour view would be blocked. We need to make sure that there will be good visibility so that everyone can enjoy the view of Victoria Harbour at the site. And for the plot ratio, it will remain the same, right? Thank you. Well, to be more direct, the GPO blocks not Jardine House but not the other building. Right, I know, but what about the car park? The car park blocks HSBC, because I often go there. Next, Mr. Wong Kok Hin. Thank you, Chairman. It is necessary to provision the GPO because the site should be used for more important and more valuable purposes. But I'm concerned about the traffic at the intersection of the GPO building and there. And after reprovisioning the GPO building to Kowloon Bay, I want to know the traffic arrangement there because every day I would go past this called Jardine House at the Corner Place, and very often there'll be traffic jam because of cars parked at the lay-by, and buses are forced to drop off passengers in the middle of the road, and it is not desirable. And after reprovisioning the headquarters to Kowloon Bay, similarly, the traffic is heavy there, and very often there is traffic congestion. Have you conducted any TIA in Kowloon Bay? I agree with Mr. Wong Kok Hin that after the reprovision, it is not the end of the matter. Different government departments are involved in the planning of the new Central Harbour Front, and as the Development Bureau representative suggests, it is not confined to just this site, but rather the whole of the Central Harbour Front in terms of the flow of pedestrians and traffic, the design will be a comprehensive one. Maybe I will defer to the Development Bureau to further explain the points, and then I will take your question on Kowloon Bay later. Ms. Kwok, in relation to Site 3 and the new Central Harbour Front, according to the outline zoning plan, there will be a multi-level pedestrian network. Apart from at-grade pavements, there will also be enhanced connectivity by elevated pedestrian links. Now, in relation to the temporary footbridge at the new Central Harbour Front, because in the future the developer of Site 3 will be required to build a landscape deck, such that after the landscape deck is provided, the footbridge will no longer be necessary and the temporary footbridge will be demolished. Now, we understand that the present connectivity will be maintained, and we do require the developer in the future to provide a footbridge that can accommodate the existing flow of pedestrian together with barrier-free access. For the landscape deck, at least it should be 6 meters wide. So, in terms of pedestrian connectivity, there will be at-grade and elevated connectivity, which will be enhanced. I don't want to waste time, but I think that she has not answered my question correctly. I asked about the traffic, not pedestrian. At the moment, for this stretch of the road next to the GPO, it's already very congested in Central, and also the TIA in Kowloon Bay. Anyway, I won't spend more time on it. Just ask the administration to give us more information for follow-up in the future. I think the points raised by Mr. Wong Kwok Kim has repeatedly been mentioned by other members. We're concerned about the traffic jam in Central. Well, let me take this question. There will be other commercial development near the new Central Harbour Front, and there will be a CDA, and that therefore provides us an opportunity to plan comprehensively. But I take the point of Mr. Wong. About the point of Kowloon Bay, I think my colleague already covered this part. In conducting the feasibility of reprovisioning, the TIA was conducted as well, and the existing road network should cope with the flow of traffic there. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Wong Kwok Kim. I don't think that many people in Hong Kong are aware of the new name of the building at Connaught Place. So that is why I just now corrected you. I said that it's now called the Jardine House. Mr. Yu Si-wing, I support this reprovisioning proposal so that we can give an overhaul to the planning of the Hong Kong Post headquarters. After the headquarters are reprovisioned, if there is no comprehensive planning, it may affect the use of space by office workers in Central. So the government should consider carefully the planning aspect. And I've also received complaints in relation to the reprovisioning of a headquarters. The complaint is that the post office vehicles have taken up a lot of parking spaces. So I hope that apart from providing parking spaces for the post office itself, more parking spaces can be provided for users, because we are in great shortage of parking spaces. If you can build more parking spaces, it can help alleviate traffic congestion in the area. There will be dozens of parking spaces, but like Mr. Wong Kwok Kim said, would you conduct another TIA before deciding how many parking spaces there we need, instead of setting a figure now? Another point about the site in Central, in the future, would you consider developing a basement so that we have a basement car park? to maximize the use of the site. Secretary, I'll respond to the point about Kowloon Bay before I respond to the point about Central PG. Thank you for the question. I don't think it is related only to a site. It relates to the whole area, and we should take a more comprehensive view of the area. Well, because of the existing demand, our design is to have some 30 parking spaces in the reprovisioned headquarters in Kowloon Bay. They are all for post office vehicles. And we have actually maximized the use of the site based on the plot ratio and other development parameters. But we note members' comments, and we'll go back and consider how we can further enhance the efficiency of the utilization. On the point of parking spaces, even the Hong Kong Post has to make arrangements for the vehicles to be parked at night elsewhere, and in some cases we do need to rent parking spaces from others, but we'll consider how the arrangement can be implemented. What about the basement car park in Central? Can you make use of the site in Central to build a basement car park? Yes, Chairman. About the use of underground space of Site 3, in our design concept, because this is a commercial space with retail elements, our design is that the retail portion and the car park will be built underground. And we also hope that by revising the OSIP, we can enhance connectivity of the underground space of different sites. About traffic, after commissioning of the Central Wan Chai bypass, we have conducted a TIA, and after commissioning of the Central Wan Chai bypass development, the development of the new Central Harbourfront will then begin, and we don't expect a major impact on the traffic there. Mr. Michael Look, this is the premium site in Central, right outside Jardine House. That is the location of the existing GPO building, and we should maximize the use of the site. So to reprovision Hong Kong Post headquarters to Kowloon Bay, in principle, is understandable. But I do have a question. After reprovisioning the headquarters, I'd like to know the postal service available in Central, because we have a lot of economic and commercial activities in Central, with keen demand of the postal service. Would you consider, in the land sale conditions in the future, requiring the developer to provide a minimum area of space for use at nominal rent by the Hong Kong Post? And about the valuation of this site, this is a premium site, so it will be put up for sale. About the $1.7 billion spent on reprovisioning the Hong Kong Post headquarters, comparing to the valuation of the site, how much of government revenue are we talking about? Secretary, it is true for Mr. Look to say that after reprovisioning the headquarters, we will not cease a postal service in Central. As we mentioned in the paper, we are going to work with the developer so that space will be provided for postal service to be provided, so that the service in Central will not be affected. As to the second part of your question, the site belongs to the government, not the Hong Kong Post. The land sale revenue therefore goes back to public coffers. This is one of the most valuable sites in Central, And together with comprehensive planning, we can maximize social and economic benefits. I can say that overall speaking, it will bring much benefit to society. And I'll defer to the PG to take the other question. The question was was about reprovisioning of existing facilities of the Hong Kong Post headquarters in Central. As set out in the paper, in the development in the future, space will be provided to reprovision the postal service, and that the service will not be affected.
I hope that the administration can come up with better financial estimates that will help in your gauging the public support for your proposal. And I hope that the government can come up with clear financial estimates for us in the future. Perhaps after the meeting, when you make funding proposal, then you will provide the information, right? But if you can provide us with the information in advance, that will help us with our scrutiny work. That can be expedited. Next, we have Mr. Chung Kwok Pen. Yes. For the new headquarters in Kowloon Bay proposed, the plot ratio has been set and the number of story has been fixed. There will be an 8-story high building. But then in Kowloon Bay, there are so many commercial buildings which are in 20, 30 stories. So do you have room to relax the plot ratio so that you can maximize the use of the sites? Because you've been talking about the shortage of space. Mr. Yu Xingwing talked about shortage of parking spaces. And can you relax the plot ratio so that you can build higher buildings? You can maximize the use of the site. You also said that for some of the facilities in Tsuen Wan, Changsha Wan, Kowloon Ban, they will also be reprovisioned in this new headquarters, and rental can be saved. We know that the post office is running on a self-financed basis, and sometimes in some years it's been making losses. So for the rental saved, will it help with the Hong Kong Post finances so that it will not be making losses again in the future? So can I ask the planning department's colleagues to respond to the point on plot ratio? Thank you. Chairman, for the CBD site in Kowloon Bay, this is a GIC1 site. The building height restriction is 40 MPD. And for the GIC sites here, we are required to build only a low buildings after we have conducted the air ventilation assessment. We have to provide anti-ventilation and visual corridors there, so that the high-density areas further inland will not pose any negative impact in the area. What about the second part of the question? Can I defer to the Postmaster General? Thank you, Mr. Chung, for your question. Mr. Chung is right. Some of the facilities are now being provided in leased premises, and rentals are involved. And if these facilities are reprovisioned in the new headquarters, then there will be some savings. But despite that, as we understand, in relation to postal services, we are facing keen competition on every side. There is competition from peers, and also because internationally, postal authorities are charging against each other, and there have been adjustments made all the time. So we are under a lot of pressure in our operation. We will try to do our best in our work and try to save up on costs and enhance our productivity so that we can provide low-cost yet effective postal services to the public. Lastly, for myself, I think that for such a reprovisioning proposals, I think these meets with the development needs of the society, and I think the government must try to strike a balance among different opinions and interests in the community. Concerning traffic and transport, some members have referred to that, and some members are also concerned about the height restrictions. And we hope that the government can maximize the use of the site. And for the new the site vacated, you can make the best use of that site. This is a public space frequented by members of the public, and we hope that there's there are mega events being held at the Central Harbour Front, and there's so many concerts being held. And also there are the e-formula race held there before, and members have also given you other views on your proposal, and I hope that the government can pay heed to all those. And concerning finances, once you've got an estimated budget, I'm sure that you would submit the same to the FC, and at the same time can you give us the information as well, so that it will help us with our work in scrutinizing the proposal at the PWSC and the FC. And I think so far what I've heard is that the members are in support of the proposal on the paper, right? So that's it for this item, and then this proposal has got the support from the EDP. And I'd like to thank the Secretary and other government officers for coming here. So let's get this wrapped up. Well, let's take a break for 5 minutes, and maybe we can, in the meantime, ask the guests for the next item to come into the meeting room, please. Thank you.